Hi, good morning, or afternoon actually.
Yep.
Welcome to Coffee Hours Facebook Live. Thank you for tuning in. I am here with Sarah Hwang, who is on the board of the National MS Society in the Wisconsin chapter.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely.
We're giving an example of the kinds of conversations you can have when you spend time with people who live, look, love, or pray differently from you. So we got to talking before we started the Facebook Live to such an in-depth conversation and interesting that we got delayed for a little while. So sorry for the delay, but thank you for being here now.
It happens.
So Sarah, tell me, what are 4 things you'd like people to know about you?
4 things that I'd like people to know about me. One is that I'm a mom of a teenager, which is
I don't know anything about that.
which is fun and challenging. I sing in a band.
What's the name of your band?
Squirrel,
Well,
with an exclamation point.
that's important.
Yes. I am on the board of the MS Society, which you know already, and I have MS. And I've been living with it for almost 20 years. It's hard to believe.
Do you have like kind of like an anniversary date that you acknowledge to yourself?
Well,
or-
I was officially diagnosed in May of 1999. I had my first symptom a year prior to that, so it's been 20 years since my first symptom, but since my official diagnosis, it's been a little over 19 years. So, yeah, it's been a long time, and I've learned a lot about it in that time.
Like it or not.
Right, exactly. So, yeah, I would say those are the things that I'd want people to know.
How, when people either find out that you have MS, what are some questions that people ask you, or how do you approach questions that people ask you?
It's really interesting because I walk with a cane on a regular basis. Sometimes I use a walker or a scooter, depending on the situation. But when I'm walking with a cane, people usually assume that I have an injury. And so they'll say, well, what happened? And I'll say, well, nothing happened. I said, I have MS. And what happened is that I was diagnosed with MS, but it's really something you have. I wouldn't say that it's who I am, but it's definitely something that is part of me. So, and usually people's reaction when I say that is, well, wow, I'm really sorry.
How does that response make you feel?
I mean, it makes me feel, okay, well, this person has compassion because they are showing sympathy for having some kind of affliction. But I also feel awkward for them because I feel that they feel awkward. Like, oh my God, I thought she was injured and she has a chronic illness. And how come I didn't know? And did I say the right thing? And so I have that moment for them where I feel like, oh, they feel really bad because they didn't know, or they feel really bad because they don't understand, or maybe they don't even know what MS is. Because I usually just say MS instead of multiple sclerosis, assuming that there's enough awareness out there that people know what it is, but maybe not. I probably shouldn't assume that.
Well, so given that you are on that side of the perspective of having somebody say, oh, I'm so sorry, like if you were in a similar situation with somebody else where they maybe have a disability or an illness that's invisible, how might you respond to them when they share that with you?
I mean, I think sometimes I'll say that must be challenging, or that must be hard, but it is awkward because you don't know how that person is dealing with it. I think that there are plenty of people out there with chronic illness who have really positive outlooks on life and who push forward and challenge themselves in ways that they didn't think they could. And then there's people who don't have that ability, either because that illness is paired with depression or it's so debilitating that really they feel they can't do anything. In no judgment place, I think everyone deals with adversity differently,
and differently at different times.
Yeah.
I mean, I imagine that you're in a different place now than you were 20 years ago.
Definitely.
In terms of how you think about your life and MS's impact on who you are.
Well, it's interesting that you asked that, because when I was first diagnosed, it was probably more difficult to accept, but I actually was not nearly as symptomatic as I am today. And I have a much more positive outlook today, even though it's much harder to deal with challenges today than it was 20 years ago, because it is a progressive illness. And so I definitely have much more trouble walking than I ever did. I mean, I used to do triathlons and things like that. And tap dance. That's another thing people should know about me. Avid tap dancer here. And even though I can't do it anymore, I'm still an avid tap dancer in my mind. But it's interesting because the physical disability has been on the decline, while my sort of emotional, mental, and my attitude about living with MS has probably gotten better.
Uh-huh. Well, you've probably built up, inner resources and outer resources and resilience.
Well, time, experience. There are several resources for exercise with other people that have MS, which at first I was worried about, because I thought, well, if I'm working out with people who are much more disabled than I am I going to feel, is that going to put a dark cloud over how I feel about my own disability? But it's actually done the opposite. It's actually given me a lot of inspiration to see someone much more disabled than myself doing things that they never thought they could do. So it's actually had a much more positive effect, but having that community has been really important as part of my process of what the MS Society coins as living your best life with MS. And that's a different story for every single person who has it.
And that's, it's actually interesting to ask the question. The MS Society is trying to give a structure and a resource to living your best life, and if you're not part of a community that, asks that question, or a resource group that asks that question, I think probably a lot of people struggle with that.
There are a lot of people out there.
What does that even mean?
Yeah, there are a lot of people out there isolated, and that's, one of my jobs as a board member for the MS Society is community engagement, and specifically for Milwaukee, but also as the board chair of community engagement in other communities as well, to get people telling their stories, and if they don't want to tell their story, to at least engage with the society in some way, whether it be some kind of a support group, which I know has a weird connotation in itself. The idea of support group, is people sitting around and complaining about their ailments. But really, a lot of the support groups that are going on in and around Wisconsin are very active, like these workout groups, so that people are engaging and trying to make their lives better, and not just the camaraderie that comes along with it, or not just the commiseration,
right?
But a sense of together we're going to fight and make our lives better. And so to be able to reach out and find people who maybe don't have that connection and let them know what's out there, make them aware of what the opportunities are as opposed to resources. I like to call them opportunities to engage, because it is. I mean, the minute I know several people who have become part of these exercise groups who said the minute I joined this group, I had a whole new outlook on what my life could be.
Wow.
Where before I was isolated and depressed and feeling like there was no hope and that my life was going to be in a wheelchair in my house alone. And it doesn't have to be that way. It's certainly not easy to take that step if that's where you've been for a while.
Right.
But hopefully with enough encouragement, enough connections in the community, people can feel inspired to step out of whatever routine they're in, shake it up a little bit, and really help change their outlook for their own ability. I think disability, which is certainly a description of the challenge I have, I don't need to focus on disability, but ability that I still have.
Right. And there's the term differently abled. Do you have any thoughts about that term?
I mean,
A preference?
No, I think, not that I have any problem with political correctness surrounding describing different groups. Sometimes I feel like it's just easier to say something that's more familiar to people. Like, it's easier to engage someone in a conversation for me if I use the word disability than, oh, I'm differently able. Well, what does that mean by that?
What does that mean? Yeah.
And it was even more when I wasn't using a walking aid, because I haven't always needed to. It was more complicated because literally all of my symptoms were invisible. I still have invisible symptoms. I have some visual, cognitive, things that you can't see. Fatigue is obviously invisible. Numbness and tingling in the skin is invisible. But now that I use a cane, I'm sort of much more accepted as a disabled person, that people can see it. Which has always, and it made me consider the fact that, oh my God, there's probably so many people out there with some sort of disability, whether it's physical, mental, intellectual, emotional. I mean, the disability runs the whole spectrum. You can't make assumptions about people. They say, oh, you can't judge a book by its cover. Well, you really can't. You have no idea what someone might be going through unless you know them and talk to them and understand.
It's a helpful perspective to have.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of articles lately about the use of disability placards for parking. And it's an interesting struggle because you'll see somebody who has a legitimate placard, or their license plate has the wheelchair sign on it. But they'll walk perfectly able to the store, what appears to be perfectly able to the store. Well, there's part of you that says, wow, I really wish that person hadn't parked in a disabled spot, because someone who really needs it, well, who am I to say if that person really needs it?
Right. That's again another assumption that we make about people based on what we see.
Right. But at the same
and what
time,
we think we know.
But at the same time, is that person using it when they shouldn't? And so, how do you can't.
How do you navigate that?
It really isn't fair to assume that they're using it for their own convenience when maybe they really need it. So that's a tough one.
Yeah. How have you handled, or what is your approach to when people say or do something that may feel hurtful or offensive or ignorant? What are your thoughts about that?
I mean, when it comes to MS, because I know so much about it, certainly not for everyone, but I know about it from my own experience, is I try to teach people, or I try to explain, okay, well, this is the challenge that I have because of the MS. I try not to take offense by what people say, because how would they know? I try to have patience with the ignorance when it comes to my MS. I can't say I'm patient about ignorance in every area. I probably could work on a couple of them. But when it comes to MS, when it comes to MS, I'm pretty patient, because I can't expect anyone that doesn't have it or doesn't know someone with it But that's interesting too, is that it's sort of amazing when you say you have MS, how people will often say, oh, I know someone, I have a friend, or I have a sister-in-law, or I have my mother, or someone close to them. Often it's prevalent enough a disease that it's kind of amazing how many
people connect with
people
it
can
so
connect.
much.
Yeah. Which is why I've always felt comfortable kind of telling my stories. Some people prefer to be much more private about it. I have found more success for myself by sharing.
Right. Sounds like a very personal way of, there's no one size fits all way to be with MS or anything else.
Yeah, I think it's easier to live in a world where people don't understand what you're going through by sharing what you're going through. Because there is no way people can accommodate what you need if they don't know what you need. So there's being sensitive to, okay, well, if I open my own business, I need to comply with the ADA. And, as I said earlier in our conversation, I don't know all the rules of the ADA, especially when it comes to business and, city planning and all that stuff. I don't know what's truly required. But unless people who need those accommodations are part of the conversation and educating people on what's needed, there's no way for a non-disabled person to be able to say, oh, well, you need a... Yeah. For instance, a great example, and this came up on Facebook a couple days ago. I have a friend with a differently abled child who uses the, I forget what they're called. It's a cart that has a seat in front of it with straps. And so they sit in that cart when they're shopping. And she said, they're so far from the door. So there's a whole foyer filled with distractions and things that can break, and before they can get their child into that seat where they're in a more secure, safe place. It's the same with not being able to walk well. I have to walk from the door all the way to the other side of the foyer to get the motorized cart to go shopping.
So placement of supportive equipment. So I
equated it to installing a staircase in order to get accessibility to the ramp. Is it's sort of nonsensical.
Right, but you may not know that unless you needed to get to the accessible.
Right. Oh, well, we have a scooter for people who need them.
Right.
Oh, maybe we should put it close to the door so they don't have to go as far. Right. Yeah, it's those kinds of things. And you think, okay, well, someone should be able to figure that one out, but it's not top of mind for a person who's not dealing with it on a daily basis.
Right. And I'm sure there's moments of frustration with that, as an added challenge that you're facing in your day. But at the same time, it sounds like you have an approach of wanting to educate and understanding that people can't possibly understand exactly what it's like to have, to walk in your shoes.
Yeah. Well, I will say, at the particular stores where that is true, and actually it's a lot of them, I have never gone to management and said, have you considered the fact that the people who need these need to not walk so far?
Right.
I haven't done that, and so I haven't done anything to make change.
Right.
And so I can complain about it, but what I need to do is go to the manager and say, it would really be much more helpful if these carts were closer to the door.
Right.
And I can do it in a respectful way. It's not like I have to say, oh, well, you're an idiot for not realizing this.
Right.
But they might say, oh, didn't think of that.
Right. There's a way to be graceful in educating, and there's a way to be graceful in being educated.
Right. And finding the balance between when to have a teaching moment, when to let something go, be forgiving of a person who is ignorant on a particular subject, but at the same time expecting that they will be gracious in accepting some teaching.
Right.
And that's not always the case either. Sometimes you correct someone or you respectfully teach them something and they shut you down because
They feel defensive.
They feel defensive. They feel condescended to. They feel...
if their intention wasn't to be hurtful or...
Right.
Then maybe they feel misunderstood.
And I can't know their intention, and they can't know mine, and then I don't mean to be condescending. I mean to educate them so that in the next time they encounter that situation, it plays out differently.
Right. And I think that's almost... we are all where we're at right now,
Yeah.
and if we accept that none of us, we're all constantly learning throughout our lives, myself, you included, and try to accept that, and then accept that of other people.
Yes.
Then we would be a lot better off, probably.
Well, and we can only control ourselves. So I take the approach of the only thing I can do is educate someone about my situation, and how they choose to react to that is on them. And my reacting to their reaction just escalates things, and so learning to let things go is a piece of it, and that's not always easy, but
It's been a part of how you try to approach these situations.
yeah, because otherwise you walk around irritated all the time, which is
Not all that fun.
no, it's not fun at all.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not successful at it all the time.
Right.
People
'Cause
say
we're
to me a
human.
lot. People say to me a lot, "Oh, you're so brave and you're so strong and you're so." And I appreciate because I take them as compliments. But I think to myself, well, what do they mean? What do they? And then I have to catch myself and say, okay, they're being complimentary, and I should let go that people are excited for me that I have the ability to rise above my own challenges. But then I also remind people, today's Tuesday.
Right. Who knows what Wednesday brings?
Who knows what Wednesday brings, or you'd have no idea what this morning brought.
Right.
Or
Right. You caught me in a good moment.
right.
Yeah.
Or maybe I have all good moments in front of other people, but when I get home in front of my family, ask my husband and my son if I rise above
I didn't bring
all the
them
time.
here, so
No.
they're not going to share with us
No, but I
what
mean,
your morning was like.
Hopefully, you have the ability to have people in your life that you can have your worst moments with. So I have plenty of worst moments.
I don't have those at all.
No, of course not. No, only me.
Well, just switching gears a little bit. I know you love theater. I know you've been in theater. Do you have a particular role that was your favorite to play, or a particular musical or show that was your favorite?
Yeah, I wouldn't say, because I mostly did performing like in high school and a little bit of community theater after college. But then I was more in an administrative role. So I did marketing for nonprofit theater for the years that I had a career. But I would have to say my favorite musical is probably Sondheim Into the Woods. And the role of the baker's wife, which is in my voice range. I've never played that role, but I have.
You would, if that would be your dream role.
I would love to play that role. I have sung songs for that role, either with a voice teacher or just at home for fun, and I love it. So I would say that's probably my favorite. But if it has as my mom and I have always said, if it has a tab number in it, it's probably good.
That's true of you, not me.
Yeah.
Well, it's been such a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for coming and doing a Coffee Hours Facebook Live with me.
It was a pleasure to do. Had fun.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. Have a good day.
Bye.